It's quite common in this day and age to turn on the news and hear a lot of talk regarding an endemic, one that has plagued the United States for nearly half a century. It has killed just over 1 million people since 1968 and has led to the mass incarceration of minorities across the United States. That endemic is the war on drugs. In the United States alone, a whopping 67,000 inmates convicted of a felony are in federally owned prisons on drug-related charges. That makes up a total of 47% of inmates in federal custody. For perspective, the closest runner-up in terms of incarcerated felons would be weapons, explosives, and arson-related charges at 32,000 inmates. That is nearly half of the entire number of drug-related incarcerations on the felonious level. On the state and local level, roughly over 283,000 inmates are imprisoned on drug-related charges. Overall, that is 350,000 drug-related incarcerations in the states, a sizable chunk of the 2 million incarcerated within these United States, which is the highest rate of prisoning in the entire world. It is hard not to advocate for sensible drug policy when these statistics come to mind, especially when it's come out that multiple administrations have gone out of their way to crack down on drug laws specifically to stamp out any chance of minorities gaining higher social standing or counterculture ideology gaining any traction. The CIA has also, at the very least, given some form of assistance to drug smuggling operations going into the United States, even going as far as accidentally sending a ton of cocaine into the continental United States to be sold. Regardless of the explicit corruption that coincides with the war on drugs, my philosophy on legislation regarding illegal substances is one of advocacy for the addicted and downtrodden in this country. I am very privileged to live in a part of the country where drug legislation is relatively progressive. However, in many parts of the country, generations are stuck in poverty due to draconian legislation that keeps people on the streets rather than rehabilitate them. This isn't even touching the public health crisis that is the opioid epidemic. In the 1990s, Portugal was going through a very similar crisis to our opioid epidemic. Portuguese prisons were filled with drug addicts, and the yearly rate of death from drug abuse skyrocketed. Upon full legalization in 2001, drug deaths and incarcerations dropped dramatically throughout the following decade, and now Portugal sets the standard for EU drug policy. The American government's policies on drugs are dated and deeply intermingled in oppressive legislation and rhetoric from a bygone era. The issues that are addressed through ruthless enforcement of the prohibition of drugs aren't going away, and much like the prohibition of the 1920s, it just propagates crime rather than keeping it off the streets. If the government truly wants progress in this country, I believe that reforms on drug policy would be a good step in the right direction.